freedom and liberty in him. So many of us sometimes think we're free, but we're not. We're still bound by things. You know, Andrew mentioned it this morning, our mission statement for the church is Isaiah 61. You know, we are to preach good news to the poor. We will heal the brokenhearted. We will announce freedom to the captives and set the prisoner free. This is the year of God's favour where we can be free in him. God tells Moses, look, I've heard the cry of your people and I'm sending you to rescue them. Verse 10, he says, so now go, I am sending you. Now you've got to realise that God was asking Moses to go back to this place where he had to flee from at the beginning. He had murdered somebody. His name was like mud. He wasn't thought of much. And God was saying, I'm sending you to go back into that place and set my people free. See, the place where he was a murderer now was to become the place where he was to be a saviour. So you can understand that Moses was a bit like, no, hang on a minute, God, whoa up. Let's just talk about this. Let's just, discuss this. And he comes out with his first excuse. In verse 11, he says, who am I that I should go? That's his first mistake. You notice the word I. He was thinking of this in his own strength. Who am I that I can do this? And how many times have we done this? We say, oh, I can't. I was always told by my mothers, my teachers, no such word as can't. But you told me, you say I can't. God says, go and witness to those people. Me? Can't do that. Do you ever have those moments when you think, God, I'm sure you're talking to the pastor, you're talking to somebody else, not me. God says, go and pray for the sick. I can't do that. That's for everybody else to do, not for me. What about the times when God says, I want you to pack up, I want you to move, I want you to become a missionary in another country? Almost having palpitations at the thought, that God could have these big plans for our lives. We are bound in the fear of the unknown. What could happen. For us, we're able to read the book of Exodus. We're able to see what Moses went on to achieve, to accomplish, what God done in Moses' life. Moses hadn't seen the film, The Ten Commandments, did he? He didn't know that one day he was going to become Charlton Heston and do miraculous things for God. At the moment he was just plain Moses. And he felt inadequate at the task. By looking at our own weaknesses and imperfections, we won't do anything for God. Because in God we are nothing. If God has called us, he has done so with full knowledge of our weaknesses and inabilities. Sometimes you say, why me, God? As if God doesn't know who I am. He knows that I'm a sinner. He knows that I'm not perfect. He knows that I have things that, I hold on to. But he still says, but I want you. I want to use you. It reminds me of a little story about a little boy called Johnny. He was 5 years old and he was helping his mother in the kitchen. And his mother said, go to the pantry and pass me out a tin of tomato soup. But he didn't want to go into the pantry because the pantry was dark. And he was afraid of the dark. And his mother said, it's okay, Jesus will be in there with you. So we went up to the pantry, we opened the door, and he looked in, but it was so dark in there that he went to walk away. But then he had an idea. He thought, well, if Jesus is in there, he opened the door and he shouted, Jesus, if you're in there, will you pass me a tin of tomato soup? See, we limit God sometimes by saying, I can't. If we are not willing to move and to go and to step into the destiny that that he has for us, then we won't experience this freedom that he wants us to live in. You know, what was God's answer to Moses? He didn't butter him up. He didn't say, oh, come on, Moses, I've chosen you because you're so gifted, you're so talented, you're so wonderful, and I want you. All he said to him was, I will be with you. This was the promise of his presence. Yeah. Isaiah 43 verse 2 says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burnt. The flames will not set you ablaze. You know, when you say, I can't, God says, but I can. You know, that's the difference. If God has called us, he knows that we can accomplish the task through his power. And we've got to start realizing that God is with us, that God is for us, and put our trust in him. What Moses lacked, God would supply. You know, Moses thinks about this now, and I got a laugh of how he put it in verse 13. Moses says, all right, God, suppose I go. You know, we do these things, don't we? We mull it over in our minds, right? Okay, hypothetically now, suppose I was to do this. This is Moses, you know, questioning God. If I was to go, and then the people said, well, who sent me? What do I tell them? Now, Moses knew that to pull this off, he needed a name, he needed an authority bigger than his own. Now, when we often doubt the power of the name of God, Jeremiah 10 verse 6 says, no one is like you, O Lord. You are great, and your name is mighty in power. God says to Moses, tell them, I am has sent you. In saying that, he was saying, I am the self-existing one, the self-sufficient one. He was all that Moses needed. You know, while Moses may be inadequate, the God who calls him and equips him certainly is not. Now, in those two words, I am, God tells us that he is all that we need him to be at every moment of our lives. There is not a situation that you will ever find yourself in that God doesn't hold the solution to. Moses had the authority of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords with him. He had the name which is above every other name. But he still doubted. What if they don't believe me? What if they don't listen to me? You know, when we have the power of God within us, yet so often we fail to tap into that power. Right. You know, we talk about this dunamis power that we have within us, power that is like spiritual dynamite. Yet sometimes we're too afraid to strike that match and allow that dynamite to explode in our lives. We have this fear of what could happen if only we allowed that power and that freedom to come into our lives. Luke 9 verse 1, when Jesus called the 12 disciples, it says he gave them power and authority to drive out all demons, to heal the sick. Luke 10 verse 19 says, I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Somebody want to get that? Hello? You know, God has given us this power that whatever we do, whatever we go through in life, he will be with us. He will never leave us. The same power that conquered the grave lives in me and lives in you this morning. God is calling us to greater things in him. But to experience it, you know, we have to overcome our fear and we have to step out in faith. Now, last year we took the girls to Oakwood Park. You know, they're getting a little bit older now and they want the adventure. The day before we'd been to Folly Farm and that was enough for me, Folly Farm. I'm not one for big rides. Oh, here we go again.